Also, positive notes. It's another student ambassador program. Every Friday or Monday morning, the student ambassadors will go to every classroom and place these sticky notes on every desk. Positive encouragement for the kids. And this was an initiative not by a teacher, but by the students themselves. Next slide. Nope. Well, all right. So the student ambassadors also started several different student groups, of course with teacher sponsors. One of them is the Out of Darkness. This is for suicide awareness. Unfortunately, this is something that we have to do these days. They also have the Mindfulness Club. And what this is a club to help out the students with daily stress and interactions. One of the unique things about our high school, so we all know how stressful high school is and how anxious kids get, is we have quiet areas throughout the school where kids can go and sit in a quiet, comfortable, peaceful place to help themselves get recentered when they're anxious. They can also ask a teacher to call one of their friends and come and sit with them, because we know how tough that can be. So recently, I met with our teachers and administrators and introduced them to our new partner, Charter for Compassion. I told them of our plans and expectations of teachers and administrators. It was very well received. In fact, I had several people come up to me over the last couple of weeks with some of the plans that they're going to be doing. So, in the 2019-20 school year, it's going to be the year of compassion at Arkansas Arts Academy. Our Arts Integration Director is currently working on 2 different programs of integrating compassion into our curriculum. One is working with Crystal Bridges, one of our Arkansas Arts Academy Museum partners. We partners with 7 different museums. But Crystal Bridges is also a compassionate museum. So we're going to work with them to identify works of art that display compassion and work that art into the curriculum and lesson plans every day, as well as museum visits. We'll also be working with our teachers to set up teams of students to design projects of compassion. The teachers will help the students to define what they want to work on, but it will be student-driven. One of the projects I've already heard of is our 712 ceramics teacher is going to work with her students to create bowls. Then they're going to go to one of the local food banks and serve soup in those bowls and give those bowls to the people that need them. Some of your younger kids, we have 2 separate campuses. We have a 712 campus and a K6 campus. At the K6 campus, what we're going to try to do is work with some of the younger students to develop YouTube videos, working with animal shelter, develop these videos to help the older animals get adopted. Because those little kids, they know compassion for animals. And I really think that's going to work. So this is going to be our first full year as a compassionate school. But it's not our first year to be compassionate. It's the beginning, and the way I look at it, if we can make 1 student, 2 students feel safer, feel better about who they are, and help reduce their suffering, whatever type of suffering it is, then we've succeeded. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jamie Ulick. So some of you know me, some of you don't. It's Terra Studios and Using Art to Create a Better World. Validly following me with the second half of this presentation. But first, I should warn you all, meetings like this can be very hazardous to your complacent lifestyle. Last year when we attended the Compassion Fayetteville dinner, we were so inspired by Marilyn Turkovich's talk about the UN Sustainable Development Goals that we felt we had to do something to raise awareness about the goals. 9 months and hundreds of hours later, with the help of the board and the great staff of Using Art to Create a Better World, 19 amazing Northwest Arkansas artists, 50 community sponsors, local musicians, students from the U of A Multicultural Center, Lionel Jordan, Lowell Grisham, and Compassion Fayetteville, we together unveiled the Better World mural at Terra Studios. Now, through all of our efforts, thousands of children and adults will be introduced to the Charter for Compassion and the UN Sustainable Development Goals every year. Back to the story. On our way home from that fateful meeting, Val and I brainstormed all kinds of ideas we could do to put a project together to support the goals. Then Eureka, we came up with the idea of a collaborative mural at Terra Studios. That was the beginning. The board agreed, we were off. We started with elaborate plans on how to do calls for the artists and vet them and assign goals and do proposals and have them do all kinds of crazy stuff. You know, the best laid plans, you know how that goes. It ended up, as soon as we started to talk to the artists, they got so excited about the project that they decided what goals they wanted to express, and we decided to leave it completely up to them as to how to proceed with their individual pieces of work. Word got out, and all the goals were rapidly taken. Signboard and paints were donated by local businesses, as were the metal and paints to rebuild the front of the building. As ask and you shall receive. One of our donors was so excited to be able to donate to such a cool project. They actually had a fund in their company that they had had for years, and no one had ever asked them for a donation. We were the first ones. Now for the hard part, asking for donations. We decided to keep it local, local individuals and business, and keep it small with a minimal donation of $250 for each sponsorship. Again, lots of plans, details, dread. Ended up the project would sell itself. We simply conveyed the idea and almost everyone got excited and wanted in. The artists completed their murals and it was really wonderful to hear their different stories and the processes of creativity the artists went through. From the illustrator who worked with a single hair brush on her work normally and thought a 4x4 panel was enormous, to the muralist that we had that normally works in 20 feet tall by 50 feet long murals for stage presentations, and she felt like she was working in this tiny postage stamp. At one point we realized that for the public to really understand the project, we would have to explain each goal and what the artist was thinking. So we created a 3-foot by 6-foot key panel talking about the goals and having a statement from each artist. It took some serious editing, as one artist said, I paint, I don't talk. And other artists wrote small books. The next idea was a brochure as a way to be even more informative to the public, which we have over on the table over there, so everybody should grab one. And they were designed in a local printer, gladly printed out 3,000 of them for us to give away. Windows and doors were removed and donated metal was installed in the building where the mural was to be installed and painted. It was terrifying. I personally did this one, to spray over each of the murals with a spray coat, because you have these beautiful murals that each person has done and spent, in some cases, hundreds of hours on. And as you sprayed across it, it would go opaque and the mural would disappear. And I would like freak out every time. And about an hour later, they'd slowly dry up and the mural itself would pop back clear as ever. One more day, and the mural was up, but veiled for public view until the unveiling. The actual unveiling went great, in spite of the rain. There was great support from the media and press. Speakers were inspirational. The students' presentation of We the People came out great. The music was entertaining and moving. The unveiling was dramatic. And the free food and beer kept everybody happy. It was truly an amazing experience when you see what can be accomplished when we come together as a community and dream big. We just want to have many thanks from everybody and everyone involved and invite you all to come out and take a look at the mural out at Terra Studios. It's an amazing piece. Thank you.
I'm Val Gonzalez, Executive Director at Terra Studios. So, as you just heard, the Better World Mural was at first intended to educate folks about the Sustainable Development Goals and the Charter for Compassion. But the project took on a life of its own. We ended up talking with lots of artists and sponsors about the SDGs and what those meant. And soon we realized that the mural would challenge and inspire folks to take action. We also saw that too often folks think that they think about the world's problems as massive and their own efforts as insignificant. And the beauty of the SDGs is that they break down the goals into these doable parts. And you can see and feel that with the individual murals. And that has allowed us to say to the public and to you, here are these small things that you can do. Pick one, pick two, pick a few, and do your part. Together we can make a difference. Unfortunately, you can't say that too many times before you start to realize your own hypocrisy if you're not doing all you can. So, in one conversation with one of the artists, he was talking to me about our carbon footprint and how to reduce the carbon footprint. And that the US has these really crazy rates of use compared to the rest of the world. Well, that got me to thinking, and I took the little quiz online, and we have lots of conversations following that up. And it led us to look at all of the goals and what we could do for each one. And interestingly, some of the things we were already taking positive steps for. Terra Studios, for example, is, I'll use the goal of reducing inequality. So, you know, we've already championed diversity and inclusion. We welcome everyone. You know, those rainbow flags out front, they are colorful and artsy, but they also make a statement that everyone is included, and we are full of pride about those flags. We also keep the art park free, and we hold down the cost for our classes and for Art Lab, where we encourage folks to be creative. And we regularly examine our pay scales and make sure that those rates are based on work and not on gender roles. Additionally, we strive to keep our artists informed and keep their pay at decent levels. And then we have installations that are going in all the time, and our new installations, like our troll farm, really conveys the values and promotes the goals. Things like food security, right, Denise? And we've just, because of this awesome thing, we have added a recycling center for all of Terra, including the nonprofit itself, for our guests, the artists, and for the residents who live there. We reuse almost everything. We're crazy good at being artsy with stuff. I see Holly bobbing her head because she knows the supply closet has everything crazy in it. But there's always room for improvement. So right now we are actively seeking grants to install solar panels. We're exploring alternate technologies to look for other ways to reduce consumption. We are also seeking grants for accessible paths to expand the paths that we have throughout the art park. And we know art's a very important component of quality education, and yet it's being really overlooked, especially in our rural schools. And there's a lot of benefits to art. I won't bore you with all of them, but problem-solving skills is one of the biggest ones, and it's one of the greatest needs that we have as a community. So we see staffing and equipping our art lab as being a crucial thing that we do to keep art affordable and accessible. We're also working on an ever-widening circle of strong partnerships. Last year we partnered with Ozark Folkways, and we brought South by Southeast Art Tour to the rural areas. We've been partnering just recently with Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, both to do badges and to get volunteerism. And of course we partnered with Compassion Fayetteville to do this amazing mural. This past year I became a grandmother. And every time I look at my beautiful little grandson, I wonder what kind of world he will inherit. So the Charter for Compassion and the Sustainable Development Goals has become even more important to me. I ask myself, what can I do to create a better world? This mural has inspired me, and it has inspired us at Terra Studios, and we hope it will inspire you to do your part, to spread the word and spread the work, because together we can accomplish great things. Thank you.
Hi y'all, my name is Taylor Bridges. I was told I could talk about whatever I want, so here we go. I also had a hard time figuring out what I was going to talk about as well, Denise. I'm a local activist born and raised here in Arkansas. I just spent the last legislative session learning in the blue flames of the fire. If you heard of the campaign Arkansas for Container Deposit Law, I was the main force driving that effort. Fighting for pro-environmental change is disheartening. It feels like that funny scene where the older sibling, who's considerably larger, stronger, and more powerful, simply holds their hand out as their younger sibling, who's smaller, weaker, and has less power, exhausts themselves, swinging and throwing punches and getting nowhere. You could say my idealism has worn and cynicism has set in. I think I speak for the rest of my generation when I say I'm scared for our future. We're afraid that we have inherited what will be an uninhabitable planet, and we know that if major changes don't take place, that's inevitable. And all the while, environmentalists exhaust themselves seemingly getting nowhere. We don't have time to wait for policy changes to fix this catastrophe, and it's past time that we take matters into our own hands. Before I proceed, I'd like to make it clear that these words are not intended to be judgments. Consider them a cry for help. We all create this world. We're all responsible for our individual actions. Everything we do has a ripple effect, and those effects have consequences. These consequences are hard to see because of the time-space separation of them. It's hard to see that every single piece of trash we waste or food that we don't compost contributes to climate change. But when it's buried in a hole of our Earth's crust, the result is CO2 and methane heating our planet. It's hard to fathom the 59.1 billion water bottles that the US consumed in 1 year, but we sure did. It's hard to see that our comfort and convenience here in America has caused sea level rise and the diminishment of islands and cultures that didn't even contribute to the climate crisis. But look at the Marshall Islands. It's hard to see that our new shirt was made in some sweatshop and contributes to child slavery, but it probably did. It's hard to see that driving through and getting a hamburger fast food is supporting the deforestation of our rainforests, but they're cutting down the trees. It's hard to see that our seafood dinner is supporting the diminishment of our oceans, but they're literally running out of fish and are being overfished. It's hard to see that purchasing non-local meat contributes to animal torture in a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, but it still happens. And it's hard to be the one here on the stage speaking these truths because it's not convenient. Nobody usually wants to listen, and we live in Northwest Arkansas. It makes it a tidbit harder. But that doesn't make them go away. The list of these harsh facts is exhaustingly extensive, but for some reason, mostly ignored. I'm up here today to ask us all to not only acknowledge these realities, but to seek to do more, to hold ourselves accountable. Fixing this mess requires a baseline shift. Our everyday actions have to change. We need to practice compassion towards our environment daily. Compassion towards the environment is compassion towards others. By ignoring this fact, we are ignoring our responsibility. The next 7 generations are counting on us. We need to be kind to our planet and its people because we all deserve to be here and it belongs to all of us. Not doing our part is neglecting our brothers and our sisters. There are countless ways we can practice compassion daily that seem to be overlooked. Even though it doesn't feel like our individual actions really matter, they do, especially when you multiply them by everyone's actions who feel the same way. There's a quote by a lady named Anne Marie Bonu that states it perfectly. We don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. Here's an example. If I take my own coffee cup every time I get a coffee, that's great. But the majority of people aren't doing that. That makes my actions small. If we can shift that, and the majority of us almost always take our own coffee cups, then that's a huge impact. A significantly less carbon emissions from manufacturing that didn't happen, a significantly less oil use because plastic is made from crude oil, it's significantly less coal consumed because we didn't have to power the factory, a significantly less potential plastic pollution in our waterways, It's significantly less emissions from transportation, not only to get it to the store, but the transportation that's required to take something to a landfill. It's significantly less CO2 released from our landfills. There are countless ways we can choose to be compassionate towards the environment every day. However, our individual actions seem to be continuously left out of these conversations and left unpracticed. We don't only need to vote in elections. We must vote every day with our actions and with our dollars. The future is up to us. Will each of us create it compassionately? Thank you.
Well, my name's Larry Frolick, and I'm thankful for being last. I've been working on a project for the last 2-3 years that concerns tortured men in the Department of Corrections in Arkansas. The area characterized that I work in are civil rights, citizens' rights, prison law reform. And for many years, what we've tried to do, it seems hard to believe that we've been doing it since 1971, and trying to punish and incarcerate our way out of the drug problem. And we found out that it doesn't work. So Arkansas joined a growing group of states in 2011 and reduced some of the drug punishments. And you know, for 25 years we had a situation where if you sold or distributed, you didn't even have to sell, if you distributed, and that meant giving it to a friend, the smallest amount of usable controlled substance, the punishment was up to life in prison. And so what has happened over those years is that many of those punishments were applied. And even when the punishments were reduced, they weren't reduced for the people that were already in prison. The easiest way for me to explain this is through an example or two. We've got Larry Stevenson, and he was guilty. He did something wrong. He sold 0.32 grams of cocaine, which is like 1/100th of an ounce. He was sentenced to life in prison. And the maximum punishment under Arkansas law now for that same offense is 10 years. We have already spent $462,000 punishing him for that $100 violation. And that doesn't include the cost of building the prison. Patrick Robertson, he sold for $75, he sold 0.494 grams of cocaine. It was wrong. You shouldn't have done that. 0.017 ounce, 1/100th of an ounce